First of all, on behalf of the Diamond Allegiance, we certainly appreciate you being here. I know that you're currently coaching. We want to share with the group where you're at right now.
Sure. Yeah, I'm in Casa de Campo, Dominican Republic, and currently managing the Toros de Este, which is basically means the East. The Toros from the East, the Bulls from the East, and we are in the middle of the Dominican Winter League fight for the playoff spot. There's 4 teams that go to the playoffs. When I got here, we were in last place. We're currently in 4th place, so now we're in contention. We've kind of turned around, righted the ship, so to speak. They had a rough start, and so in the middle of doing that, it's kind of a side thing that we do as minor league coaches is work down here in the Winter League, and it's just a great way to get experience in all different types of the game, dealing with the front office, with ownership, with players, trying to, keep the lineup straight every day, and then who's on, the roster, and then get guys hitting too. Hitting has been a big thing. This team hasn't hit, and now we're really having to focus on that. So I'm glad we're talking about it tonight, because we've been talking about it in the office with the players the last couple of days.
Oh, that's a perfect segue, and you kind of just teed me up there. Before we get started and talking about mechanics and mindset tonight, if you could just share with our group that's here tonight and those that'll be watching us, on the recording, what's your background in the game? Obviously, I'm lucky enough to, you being from Florida, and for all of you that don't know, Andy's got a son who is a freshman, I believe, now at NC State. That is a great story of player development and just continuing to get better and trusting the process, and as a name that all of you will hear going forward with him in the ACC. Just a phenomenal hitter. Obviously, Andy's got his fingerprints all over him being his son. But, down here in Florida, we've got a lot of good baseball. We're lucky, but Andy is one of the foremost guys when it comes to hitting in this area, and obviously not only in Florida but around professional baseball. So, Andy, if you could just share a couple minutes your background and
Sure.
and get started there.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Miami, Florida. Went to Killian High School. We didn't have travel summer ball back then. We played American Legion, so you combine like 3 high schools, and it's like kind of your area town versus their area town. And so it was very competitive, and it was I didn't care what my batting average was. I cared about winning the game that night. So it kind of grew up in that era of baseball. A lot of good players in Miami back in the day, grew up around that era, and Alex Rodriguez, Doug Minkiewicz, Mickey Lopez. Westminster Christian was a powerhouse. We all played Legion ball together. Ended up going to NC State, played there for 4 years, got a chance to play on the United States national team after my sophomore year with Todd Helton and Dustin Hermanson, Todd Walker. Again, lots of big leaguers on that team as well. Got to play 11 years professionally after NC State, getting a degree in communications there first. I got a chance to get a cup of coffee as a player with the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2001 as a big league player. Got to hit a double on the first pitch I saw, which was cool. Got to hit a homer. Got a big league homer too against Joe Mays, who started the All-Star game in 2001. And then after the playing career, started coaching, and I think it's been 17, 18 years coaching professionally now in all different roles, managing in the minor leagues, 9 years of that, 2, 3, 4 years as a hitting coordinator, which basically means you're implementing your hitting program throughout the minor leagues, is what I'm doing now with the White Sox. And then a major league coach with the Boston Red Sox, and we won the World Series in 2018, and got to be around Mookie Betts and JD Martinez for 2 years, and Tim Hires, who's the Rangers hitting coach. And honestly, like, I had been a minor league manager. I did hitting lessons in Central Florida, in the Oviedo area. Had lots of, Deacon Lippett, like, guys that were even like names from the past. They still seem like little kids, young kids to me now, but did lessons in that area and stuff. So I taught hitting. I knew hitting, but when I got to the big leagues, when it really changed, and I learned a lot more. Being around JD Martinez every day for 2 years, I really learned how to teach the feel of mechanics and the moves of mechanics and so forth. And so, and then game planning as well, just really learning how to, create an approach for a player using information that we have now available to us, and being able to translate that to a hitter. And, which is something that I think is over, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, tonight, but you don't need the information to have an approach. It streamlines it so that we can have a really concise approach and, specific approach. And so, but you can still have one as a young player, but I'm sure we'll talk about that. I'm already opening up other cans of worms there. So
I think we're just going to go wherever this conversation takes us tonight, honestly.
Sounds
But,
good.
you obviously mentioned JD and Mookie Betts. I think that, obviously two of the best hitters, both cerebral, right? Hitters, just the way they go about their game, and then obviously physically gifted. Maybe share a couple stories about those two. Let's start maybe with their mental approach to the game, how they approach their daily work. I think that's one thing for high school kids that we try to teach as coaches, right? Is that professional approach. So maybe a couple of tidbits about what they did on a daily basis.
Oof, I mean, heck, we could talk the whole hour about that. Honestly, that's a heck of a question. But to try to wrap that one up in a quick answer, I'm going to do my best. I mean, you're talking about those two. I was the assistant hitting coach in the big leagues, so that means you're the flip guy, and you're the throw BP guy, and you're the kind of the working B, and then Tim Hires is kind of the game planning approach guy, even though we both kind of collaborate on that. So those guys wore me out physically, number one, because they work so hard. I mean, I was firing lots of baseballs every day to the point where we were, in some pain at the end of the year, just because we're just wore out. So, I mean, JD every day, hits throughout the day, during the game. So the work ethic is number one, is like off the charts. Like those guys, they put in the time. Early hitting on the field, they're there. It's just, I mean, like early hitting in the cages, like they don't miss, and their routine is very structured. It's very repeatable. And it's also like manageable in that they can marinate it a little bit. Like one day they may, hey, let's try this, let's try that, and so they're not afraid to try something new. So that's part of it also, that the work ethic was really clean, it was repeatable, and it was there. And then you're talking about like competitors, like when the bell rings, they're very likable guys, very personable dudes at 5 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, even at 6:30. But you get to 6:50, and all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, this dude is
Showtime.
Yeah, like it's game time. Like, yeah, we're working on all this stuff, and we're trying to master all this stuff and posture and moves and blah blah blah, which is all, I'm not blah blah blahing it like it's not important. It is important, it's super important. But if you don't have the compete gene, and you don't have the freaking, forget you, buddy, let's fight, type of mentality in this game, pitching or hitting, you really should pick up a golf club or a tennis racket. The game's probably not for you, and so because that's what the best players have. And honestly, the biggest difference is probably that, like, one thing I noticed about major league players that I didn't know was that they're just as human as anybody else, as far as doubting themselves. Like you'd have to pump up dudes that you didn't think that you'd ever have to pump up, and I don't want to get into stories too many and names and stuff like that, but macho guys that freaking got lots of money and lots of success in the big leagues. Hey man, I don't feel good today. I don't know if I can hit, and you're like, what do you mean? And so, and I learned, I'm like, hey, this dude's just a dude, and he's doubting himself just like I did this morning. When I put my clothes on, does this match? Do I look okay? Do I look fat in this shirt? I'm getting fat. Like people, this is how we think as humans. And now you're playing a game where you're failing and you're getting beat. And can I still hit? I'm getting older. My bat speed, like the self-doubt is just constantly there. And so, that is something that you have to battle as a young player. I think young players think that they're the only ones that do it and have it. And the news is no, big league players do it also, even superstars. Every day they battle it. Heck, I'm having to talk about it here in a winter league, because I have major league players that are on my club that aren't performing currently in their home country, where people say, hey, you're supposed to be a big leaguer. So there's pressure on them here, sometimes more than in the States.
Yeah, I think that's something that definitely gets under talked about, both at the big league level, right? I think obviously you being there and have coached there, I've been lucky enough to coach some players that have made it there. And I think the biggest thing for me is when you turn on the TV, they are just that same guy that was when he was 12, 13, 14 years old. Now he's 10 years older, 15 years older, but they're still humans, right? So that human connection as a coach, great parlay, like as a hitting coach, how much stress do you put on that relationship part of it first before you go into mechanics, before you go into mindset, right? How much does that relationship matter with your players?
I mean, that's huge, man, because like, you got to there has to be trust. If there's no trust, then it doesn't really matter the information you're giving them. And they have to know that you care about them. I mean, and again, we had a similar situation here yesterday. I'm trying to build the trust here with this group of young men, and men, grown men, actually in their 30s. Some of them, heck, we got a couple 40-year-olds on this club that have big league time, that got millions of dollars, that still want to play in Dominican. And so just like, there's issues in here where guys, the Dominican players don't necessarily earn what the American players do as imports. They almost kind of discriminate to their own players. So the players are kind of chapped about it, right? And I get it, but at the same time, like when we put the uniform on and we go out on the field, you have to respect the game at all times, and you have to play the game hard all the time, because the game will expose you no matter who you are and no matter how good you are. And we had it happen with some big leaguers here. So I don't remember what your original question was. I got on a tangent there, but like you said, this conversation is going 14 different directions. So
we're all good, Andy. We're all good.
Okay.
Well,
you might need to bring us back. Yeah, you might need to bring it back.
Let's bring us back. Let's focus a little bit and talk about the mechanics of the swing, right? Both from, I think, your organization as the Chicago White Sox, is there absolutes that you guys are focusing on, are teaching? Obviously, the big talk in the game now is between, the quote unquote launch angle swing, right? Or the flatter swing, right? What are some of your beliefs? What are some of your absolutes? Obviously, we know that every body is made different, but I guess the two questions would be, what are some absolutes and what are some things that you guys do in the White Sox on a daily basis that you think really can help a player's development?
So we instituted a program in Instructional League 2021, which was so we're a year plus into our program, basically overhauling the program with the White Sox. So we started from scratch and instituted a bunch of drills, a daily routine, and gave the players the freedom to kind of manage their own routine, but yet with a certain mindset and package of drills in mind. This is all going to make sense in a second. So one of them is, the first kind of drill packages include getting into your back hip, or I like to call it activating your engine, like getting into your engine, which is basically your right butt cheek, or if you're a right-handed hitter, or your left butt cheek if you're a left-handed hitter, and back hip. It's the glute, and the way that the glute turns the back hip under the spine instead of around the spine. That's how we get the most efficient movement. And so training that, it's not a natural movement, because when we want to turn aggressively, we end up spinning and basically using more of our quad and kind of a squat spinning type motion, and instead of pushing our heel into the ground and kind of activating our glute so it'll turn underneath us. And so number one for our players, again, this is kind of a long-winded answer, but number one is you have to do something every day to activate and connect yourself to the ground. It can be a step back drill. It can be using these little foam pads or bubbles that we have where they step on them to kind of feel more of a balance feel. It can be, we have a bunch of them. So a bunch of different drills for that. So then the second part is then path. All right. So now every day we need to do something for our path. Now, we have to have good posture, because clean angles only happen when we have clean posture. So anytime you're doing this with your shoulders and your shoulders are turning this way, that's never a good thing. So you do not create launch angle by tilting yourself backwards. You create launch angle by using your elbow to run in front of you and then catch the ball out front and create a launch angle. That is how launch angle is created. So
I want to stop you right there for a second, if you don't mind. I know that just obviously you were around JD for several years, and I think one thing that I see a lot of that he does is a lot of one-handed type of stuff, right? Is that kind of the path that you're talking about, and one of the drills that might, be a specific drill that can be done by players?
Yeah, so that's part of the deal, basically. Part of the deal is one hand drills every day, man. JD did them every day, got Mookie. I got to watch Mookie and JD like put on a display. I got to watch JD teach Mookie, and Mookie basically follow JD, and the transformation happened. I was the throw, you know what? That was I was a bystander, but I got to watch it. I got to watch Mookie learn it. And then we 2 days, I must have thrown 500 baseballs. And Mookie comes to me in spring training. We were playing the Astros in West Palm. He goes, "Hey, AB." I'm like, "What's up, Mook?" I'm like, "Please, no more swings, because I can't right now." Like, I was just thinking, we going to the cage again, bro? Like, come on, like, please. We just made a road trip here. Let me just sit down and watch the game. And so he goes, all that work we did, all that stuff with JD. I'm like, yeah. Like, it was great. You look good. He's like, "Hey, I ain't doing it no more." I'm like, what?
What?
What? What do you mean? But then he went back the next day, and then he was fine. Like, this is how Mookie is. Like, it's not like, "Oh, I'm a bad, you know what? Like, I'm killing it every day." No, it's just another human being that doubts himself just like anybody else and is searching. But anyway, he's sold out to JD's process, which is one hand drills, training the path and the hip to connect with it every day. It's just like almost taking your golf club and just doing your chipping, just controlling it, the head of the club and so forth, and just controlled movements, connecting the ground, connecting the path, etc. So those are the things that they would do every day. The one hand drills are super important.
Okay, so you've got connect to the ground, number one for you guys, right? You've got path number two, right? What's next for you guys that you require?
So then from there, we want to add some sort of recognition. So what I don't like is mindless reps. I like doing the routines and getting the movements going. Like, we have to have a routine where we're creating repeatable movements that we can do every day. And that's important, super important. But once that's happening, we don't want to spend 20, 40 minutes on one hand drills to make everyone perfect. We want to get, just every day a little bit better every day. Like 15, 20 every day is better than 200 every day. Because you're not going to, 200 every day isn't going to help you get it any faster. Getting in the routine of doing it clean 20 times, 15 times is good. Then get to the next drill. Then from there, we want to go pitch recognition, because I don't like just the same pitch in the same spot every time, because that's not what happens. We're not training swingers here. The ball is not just sitting there like a golf swing. We're training hitters that have to learn how to hold their backside and hold the ground and adjust the pitches. And so we can't do that if we're just swinging at the same pitch at the same time. Now, the next step for me is also creating like training velocity, because the timing off velocity is a lot different than the timing off flips or tee work. Nothing wrong with flips or tee work, but you got to train to the truth. Again, spin. I'm in Dominican Winter League. I'm trying to get these guys to hit the breaking ball machine. They're like, "Man, you're crazy, American coach. What's the matter with you?" Even though I'm bilingual, they're like, "No, we don't want to hit no curveball."
Right.
I'm like, "Yeah, but y'all need to hit curveball because that's what they're throwing you in the game. So let's prepare for it." But why don't they like it? Because Latin men, and this is just how it is, machismo, it's part of the culture, right? So they don't want to look bad against the curveball machine. They're afraid to fail against it. Just like young players are. "Hey, you want to hit the curveball?" "Nah, it's too hard. I like the fastball better." Well, you're limiting yourself to grow because you're afraid that you might not have as much success hitting all those fastballs down the middle, make you feel good about yourself. But guess what? They don't throw it there in the game all the time. You're going to have to hit the breaking ball. You're going to have to hit the sinker away. You're going to have to learn how to sit on the changeup. Now, that those skills don't just come to you from the sky. Those skills have to be trained either in tons of at bats, or, "Hey, we're going to do flips, little Johnny, but we're going to do flips today. I'm not going to just throw them down the middle so you feel so good and you hit every ball great," because that's not preparing you for freaking the real game. It's not what happens. I'm going to take some off. I'm going to throw one up, down, slow, fast, and you're going to have to I want you sweating just in like locking in here. Just, because otherwise just taking beautiful swing after beautiful swing, that doesn't really help us. Yes, engage the ground every day, check. Path clean to the middle of the field, really good direction to the middle, check. And then from there we go velocity, change speed, spin, add all that to it, the variable parts. And then it goes to the, machine work where it's the velocity and then the breaking ball. Hopefully they can hit the hanger and take the other ones.
So for a high school hitter, that, obviously some high schools have access to machines and can do those type of things. If you're just, in the backyard or working with your teammate, right? What are some things that you can do realistically to kind of simulate those type of things?
So, I mean, if you have a tee and you have your guy putting the ball on the tee, I mean, this is a simple one, and we got a net here. You could do it with a dang wiffle ball and a fence. Okay, you take your stride, and as you take your stride, your buddy says the word number 1, 2, or 3. 1's a fastball. Okay, I land and deliver. Boom. Okay, 2's a changeup or slider. 2 would be a slider. So then I'm hold for a second. Boom. And I don't know what the number is yet. 3, and then I hold changeup, and then I go. So that way, even in tee work, there's a variable there. It's not just block training, and so there's random training. So then he's yelling 1, then he yells 3, and then he yells 1 again, and then he yells 2. And so you're having to think about your timing and holding your backside, not just like creating this swing to create this incredible bat speed and exit velocity, like the running and throwing the ball as hard as you can and the freaking swing hard as you can. So you get all this exit velo. Like, okay, I get it, but the game is not played like that. Right. And so that may be great. Like you might be able to hit a soft toss 110 miles an hour, yippee-ki-yay. But if the ball wiggles at all and you're hitting and you miss it by 2 feet, then it doesn't matter that you can hit the soft toss 110 miles an hour. So It's better to work on the craft of the game, the adjustability of it. And then once you learn that, like you mentioned Isaiah earlier.
Yep.
I have not done any bat speed training with him at all. It's just been baseball. He grew up, he was 12 years old around Mookie and JD. And, I have a little bit of my stamp on him. And during COVID, we were able to do some work, and I think it really helped him. But he was around Mookie and JD every day in the clubhouse and followed those dudes and was in the cage picking up balls and listening to everything they said. And then I had to leave to go get water, or whatever. And he'd hit with him, and so he's got the drills. Like he trusts it. However, he's a pretty good hitter now. I now might want to mess with the bat speed training with a kid like Isaiah, because he's already like the craft of centering the ball. He knows how to do that. He's really good at that. The hand-eye coordination is above average, and he knows how to control his backside. He has adjustability. So you know what? I would cautiously, hey, let's do some of this stuff. But just to train bat speed and 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 not train the other stuff, your career, it's not going to last very long.
You got to build the engine first, right? You got
to build it. Yeah, it's a hand-eye coordination, reaction type game with a lot of anticipation, which basically would be my next point, that you have to master the anticipation piece, and that you can't just do that when it's random training. So
let's talk about Isaiah a little bit. I'm going to let you brag. I know he's your son, but following from afar like I did, freshman, sophomore year, you can kind of go through the progression, but was probably considered by most maybe an undersized guy, right? Maybe not on the national radar, right?
Yeah.
What did he do, and what did you guys do from a player development standpoint? Like, if you could essentially, you are a parent, right? You've just been through this travel ball whirlwind, right? What did you guys do? What did you focus on? And what was your path to get your son to where he is today?
So, that's a really good question. So, he was always the smallest guy on a team, growing up in travel ball, and, he played really good defense. He'd been shagging, at professional field since he was 6, 7 years old. So he knew how to catch the ball, and he could play anywhere on the field. So he was always in a travel ball lineup, so to speak. But he just was always, kind of afterthought because he was so undersized. And I would always tell him, listen, man, you catch the ball, you know how to play, you know how to hit a cutoff man, you're a good baseball player, you handle the bat well. When you get man strength, everything will kind of, fall into place. It'll be a lot different for you. And so that kind of started happening when COVID hit. One thing we were able to do was kind of hit every day when everything shut down. So there was another dad in our community, Harlan Faircloth, and his son Cade and Isaiah have grown up together. So we we'd go out to a field in Tuscaloosa and I'd throw BP. We had a portable L screen, and I started videoing him actually. And I noticed that he was really kind of a high leg kick and kind of jumpy. And I actually sent it to Tim Hires, who was my compadre there in Boston, and had Tim look at it because Isaiah was kind of at that age where he really wasn't listening to what Dad said. But if Tim said it, then it was kind of cool. So I said, hey man, you're kind of not in your hip. You look like you're in your quad. And remember Mookie used to really load into that hip and cock his hip, and he's like, yeah, I don't know. And I did like a slow mo on the video app that I had. I mean, it was COVID, we had nothing to do, right? So I was like, I'm
Right.
videoing him breaking his swing down. And so Tim's like, hey, he's not in his hip, man. Like, and so once he started texting with Tim directly, started working on the drills again, getting back into the ground. So then fast forward, we play he makes the third team for the Power, and he was super upset because he was like, man, Dad, I'm never going to get anybody with the third team. I was like, listen, man, you just go to the third team and rake. And that year, actually, the third team ended up being better, which happens in travel ball sometimes. That's why
Yeah. All the
you should
time.
never like fret, because I was feeling his pain too. I was empathetic. It's my son. You know what I mean? He's upset. So you want to hear his being upset and try to like help him. And, that team ended up being better than the second team, just the guys, the commits and so forth. And they had a great group, and he has friends from that team. And we have friends from that team that never would have happened, obviously, if we don't make that third team. So he makes the third team. And because of the hip thing, the kid starts to rake, dude. He goes to perfect game. And the one in the fall, that's the big one that everybody goes to. And he's he's like top 3 in hitting. At one point, he was leading it of the whole tournament.
Yeah.
And then this team makes a run. The third team, the first and second team were bounced, and the damn Chico's bail bonds third team is making it to the finals, right?
Yeah.
Or not to the finals, but like they made it deeper in the playoffs than anybody had thought, right?
Yeah.
And so so that's where it started. And then he started swinging it, and NC State was like, and then UCF, and then because one starts calling, like he was getting no calls, and then he went into high school and had a really good year in high school. And then NC State was like, okay. And then UCF was like, okay. And then USF, Alabama, Birmingham. And I thought he was going to go to UCF and play where his sister plays soccer. And the next thing you know, he tells us he's going to NC State. So I was like, all right, because I played there, and it kind of hit me a little weird, but he really doesn't want to have anything to do with, that I played there. That's not really, he loves North Carolina. He's been there a lot throughout his, we've visited there before because, Dad went to college here, and managing in the minor leagues in Durham, and him going on road trips. So he's been there. He's seen it before Charlotte. He's seen, his sister almost went to UNC Charlotte. So he's on his own. He doesn't, and I played there so long ago that, I still got some records, but my name ain't around, like nobody cares. So, it's he's gonna make his own mark, and I'm really excited to watch him play in college. He had a really good fall. I think he led all freshmen fall in hitting, and got a big triple against Duke at the Durham Athletic Park to tie the game late in the game. So little stinker, man. He's it's been fun to watch.
That's awesome. So when would you say that was it obviously a work ethic thing, but was there also just something that kind of clicked in his mind and the way his confidence, right? I think we started at the beginning talking about how even at the big league level, some guys struggle with confidence, right? Like maybe we can shift here to the mindset, right? And we've talked about kind of mechanics, but with the guys that you work with at the professional level, all the way down to the high school player, how much does that mindset matter? And what are some things that players can do to better that mindset? What are some important things?
So important, man. I mean, it really is. And a positive mindset. I mean, the negative and the positive, I think as human beings, we fight it every day, like just there's so much negative in the world. There's so much negative energy. There's so many negative thoughts to have about your own self, about your situation and what could be happening with you and so forth, especially in baseball. Like, and then you're playing a game where you fail. Like this game's hard, And so Pete Hurtler was my coach at Miami Killian High School in 1991. And Pete played at FAU in the 70s. It was he's from Hialeah, just kind of a street guy, tough guy. but knew baseball, and was just a really, really solid influence as far as on the field in my life. And he got us around home plate, and he said, "Okay, guys, this is how we're going to hit it at Killeen High School." And he got in the batter's box, and we're standing all behind. And he gets in the left-handed batter's box, and because he was a little lefty, about 5'6". He "This is how you're going to hit and Killeen." He looking back at us. He's like, "You tap the plate, you look out to the pitcher, and you go, 'All right, bleeper, bleeper.'" And he said, "You got the ball, I got the bat. Let's bleep and go. Bring it." And he looked back at us. "You guys got that?" "Yes, sir." "Okay, stretch." So like, I didn't know about no technique back in the day, boys. Like, there was no like path, ground, hitting guy. Like, tap the bat, look at him, and go, "All right, let's go, bring it." And you throw that sphere, I got this stick, and I'm gonna freaking fight you, and I'm gonna win. And so I tell you what, I played 11 years. I played with David Ortiz, Miguel Cabrera, Miguel Tejada, who got arrested today. I saw, goodness gracious. I mean, that's a whole other story. I got to manage Manny Ramirez, Christian Yelich, JT Realmuto, Mookie Betts, JD. I mean, I'm not bragging, but I've been around some of the greatest. And all of them have that same Coach Hurtler mindset. I don't care what's going on. I don't know, my girlfriend, my family, my parents, my recruiting, my schooling, whatever distraction I have, when it came time for tap the plate, all those dudes are let's go. It's kind of like Top Gun's been a big movie lately, the second one or whatever. And
Yep.
In the first one, there's that scene where he's back in the fight after he kind of crashed and everything, and he's doubting himself, and he gets caught in the jet wash, and he's out of the fight, and he's like, "Yeah, it's no good. It's no good." And they're like, "Engage, Maverick, engage. Let's go. We need you." Right. And it's kind of similar to baseball. Like, we're in that batter's box, and it's like, "That's no good. I don't feel, he's going to hit this pitch I'm going to throw, or I can't hit him. He's throwing too hard, or that slider's too nasty, or whatever it is." Like, you're beat, man. You're beat. You're not engaging in the battle, because the greatest gift you have in hitting is the ability to anticipate what's getting ready to happen, meaning that strength, hand-eye coordination, all important, right? However, that's not what makes Albert Pujols great. What makes Albert Pujols great is that if you wind up and throw something at him, he knows how to coil his body, see it out of your hand early, and deliver the barrel to it no matter what happens. Now, if you go underhand, and Jenny Finch faced Albert Pujols, which she did, and she punched him out on 3 pitches.
Yeah.
Why? How could he not hit her? He's the best hitter in the world. He's the best hand-eye coordination, the best bat speed. All of a sudden, it has a lot to do with that, but he has no ability to anticipate the underhand pitch because he's never seen it, right? So he has to react. And by then, a lady like Jenny Finch, who's one of the best pitchers in the world, it's like facing Verlander, except a softball pitcher, basically, right?
Yep.
She's got too good of stuff. If you're trying to react to it and you're not anticipating it, then it's going to beat you. It's just that little, and that's the engagement or not engagement. Am I hunting, preparing early to attack the ball there, or am I waiting to see it? And I call that counterpunching. And if you have a counterpunch mindset, again, I'd grab a golf club or a tennis racket. The game's not for you, especially at the college professional level. That's where you want to play. You have to be in attack mode. And that is back to Coach Hurtler. All right, mother flower, you got the ball, I got the bat. Let's freaking go. Bring it. And I don't care what's going on, how your swing feels. If you don't have that, I mean,
Andy, I got a great story for you.
Bring it. Yeah, let's hear it.
When I was in college, our leadoff hitter was the National Player of the Year, and he probably had one of the ugliest swings that I've ever seen in my entire life. Right? His on deck bat was a sickle, like the Grim Reaper. Right? Uh-huh. So he'd swing this bat on deck, then he'd take his bat and he'd drag it up behind him like he was a caveman. Right? He'd get up right on top of the dish. He'd roll his sleeve up. He'd spit at the pitcher, and he said, "Bring it, bring it."
I like it.
Dude hit, like 440. He was a year older than me. I called him. I was struggling my senior year, about halfway through, and I called him. I'm like, "Hey, man, can you give me something?" He's like, yeah. He goes, the pitcher sucks. And he said, don't miss the fastball. He's like, I had 120 hits last year, and I think I had 10 of them off a breaking ball, right? So just that mindset that you're talking about, right? Get the ball out front, be on time, right? Don't let anybody beat you, and have
Yep.
confidence in yourself. And just an anecdote to that story, that dude is now the CEO of the #1 natural gas producer in the world, right?
How
So
about that?
he's
How about that?
taken that mentality, right, and pushed it into his life, which is a really cool story. So
That's good.
mindset and what you can learn in this game is so, obviously it's why we're all in love with it, right? I mean, it's just such a beautiful game and parlays so much into life. So we got I think about 10 more minutes, and then we'll open it up for some questions. I think the last thing I'd love to just kind of spend a little bit more time on because you've been there, right? And you're fresh out of it, and you've seen a player, go from that undersized guy. He was on the third team of his own travel program, right? And now he's, by all intents and purposes, obviously the lineup hasn't been made yet, but it's probably going to be, starting as a freshman in the ACC, right? What are the things that you can tell kids? I think it's a great story about, just continued perseverance and trust in the process, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think one thing that Isaiah didn't, there's nothing that one thing he didn't waver was that his belief that he could play. Like, I think he was pissed that he wasn't on the top team because he thought he was better than guys on the top team. He believed in himself. Now, sometimes we're right as players, sometimes we're wrong. But either way, to have that belief in yourself, I think it's super important if you want to try to play this game. And then the work ethic, like you can't, players now, it's very difficult for them, and I'm sorry for that. Like the distraction level for players, we don't really know. If I would have been growing up around phones, knowing myself as a human, a high school player, I would have been distracted too. And so it's different. Okay, it's tough. There's a lot more stuff than when we grew up. However, if you want to be great, you have to manage your time well. And part of being great is, like Michael Jordan's, the Kobe Bryant's, the Mookie Betts, the JD Martinez, they're very structured in how they work and in their daily routines. And you can't tell me you want to be great and play college baseball and you're on the freaking phone all the time, snapping your face off. Like, all right, be social, fine, but then you got to go do the work, man. You got to get in the weight room. You got to make sure that you're doing the sprint work. You got to make sure you're training velocity, all the stuff. Don't tell me you want this and then sit on your butt.
So how much did you see Isaiah work on it?
Oh man, he was Oviedo High School. We're blessed. I mean, Andy Lyon and the coaching staff, and right there. I mean, these guys are baseball dudes, are like lifers, Yep. And no matter what, they've worn different jerseys. They were Lake Howell, they were DeLand, and they care about the kids. And he runs it like a college program. So they have a strength coach, and that played at UCF, and so the lifts are very, are similar to a college lift. And so, man, he busted his butt, man. He was in the weight room doing all the deadlifting and getting your core stronger and all the stuff and putting on the muscle, and then relentlessly bugging the crap out of the coaching staff to hit in the cages and, to try to get in there on a Sunday, and I'll throw to the guys, bring a couple friends, whatever it took to work and get better. Just a relentless pursuit of trying to, the dream, basically. Because I think Isaiah saw how much the big leaguers worked. And I think, and I think that's a lot of things that people don't see is, the things that Mookie would say, I'd be like, what? Like, I have the screen 15, 20 feet away from sitting down, throwing the ball as hard as I can. And he's like, throw breaking balls, change ups, mix it up. Like, I was like pitching, like it was like coach pitch distance, and I could throw anything I wanted. And because he just wanted to make it as hard as it could, and it's like, but it was just like an endless pursuit of excellence.
That's beautiful. That's very well said. Question we got popping in here: if you could give 2 of your top tips for youth players to work on when it comes to mindset, like, is there something functional, right, that can drive them? Is there something daily that they can do to really help that?
2 things you kind of broke up for 1 second. 2 things to help a youth player
on their mindset. Like, what are 2 tips or drills that a youth player can do on their mindset?
So, number 1, practice resets. So, a baseball game, Major League Baseball game, obviously different in travel ball, but it applies. It's 3 hours of baseball. Actual baseball played in the game is about 15 minutes. So that breaks up 2 hours and 15 minutes of downtime, and it breaks up if you go by pitch. And the smart people have done the math. There's about 15 seconds in between each pitch. How you manage that 15 seconds in your brain is super important. Okay, if you don't manage that time well, and your brain is okay, strike one. Gosh, man, it's always strike one. Why do I always have strike one? Dang it. Oh man. The coach is here to watch me. Okay. You're done. Like that's not the opposite way is boom, strike one. Okay. That was a fastball down. I'm looking for a fastball up. Dig back in. All right. Hunting a fastball up, tap the plate. Let's go bring it. Boom. Breaking ball down, step out. I'm committed to my plan. Fastball up. Here we go. Bring that fastball up. Engage. Let's go bring it. I mean, and on and on and on, like repeating that. If you're at second base and you're like, oh man, look at that car, look at that Maserati in the parking lot. That's sweet. And then, foul ball. And then like, what do you do? Are you zoning out? Are you on each pitch? Oh, he pulled that foul. I'm going to take a step in the hole. Like mentally engaged in the game in those 15 seconds. And then being able to reset when you have failure. Sean Green, former big leaguer, talked about knocking his cleats hard to feel some pain in between pitches because he wanted to get his brain out of the mess of the offer and what's he going to throw and everything else and just kind of reset it. Evan Longoria used to take off the batting gloves and look at the left field foul pole. I think he might as his reset. Having a mental reset where you're controlling your breathing, practice breathing. And that sounds crazy. And what do you mean? I can't go to the weight room and do this? No, there's no machine at Crunch Fitness to practice breathing, but it might be the most important thing that you can do is learn how to be able to stay in a moment because you have pitch pressure. Tim Hires likes to call it pitch pressure. When I'm in the cage and I'm banging, boom, I'm having fun. My music's playing. We're all having a good time. Life is good. But then the game, the pitch pressure, like, okay, now what? How do you able to keep that, so adding stress to your practice will help you manage stress in the game. That would be my next point of don't practice chill. There's a time for the chill practice. Yeah. But practice hard where you get your butt kicked and you suck a little bit. It's okay. It's okay to get beat up and to fight through something, So
Andy, one drill, I don't know if you've ever heard of this or done this, but I've talked to a couple of hitting guys where they would actually make their guys before they went into the turtle to take BP, do 20 push-ups or 20 sit-ups, get the heart rate up, right? And then have to get into the box, try to get themselves to slow it down really quick. Just try to simulate that adrenaline and the heart rate going up in that moment, right? I don't know if that's something that you've done, but something that I've talked to a couple of guys about that I found pretty interesting and in a way that kids can try to simulate that, that extra heart rate going during a game and breathe and learn it. So
yeah, I'm all for that. Being as creative as you can when it comes to adding stress to the player so that the training is a little bit more difficult. That's a good question.
Well, we got another question. I know that you've been kind of away from travel ball for a little bit with your son out and obviously coaching professionally now, but with the Diamond Allegiance, which essentially has formed over the last 18 months, which is, a grouping of some of the best travel programs in the country, Power Baseball, Team Elite out of Georgia, the Canes baseball, Indiana Bulls, CBA, the list goes on, right? And what we're trying to do is obviously bring people like you to educate parents, but also work together to better the travel ball space. So the question is, excuse me, in your knowledge, what are your thoughts about the Diamond Allegiance and what they're trying to do for travel baseball?
I think it's great, actually. I mean, first of all, I've dabbled in it before years ago, had my own academy, and then obviously going through it as a parent with Isaiah and just there's so much, there's nothing regulating this business, basically, which it's turned into is it's a business. And so the only way, and I've thought about this actually as a parent and when I owned my own travel ball team, was like, if we had like a governing body or something that kind of regulated and kind of oversaw some of this, then maybe we could manage it better. And I think that's really a lofty goal that may not happen in our lifetime, but But I think what you guys are doing is the kind of the first step is get a bunch of really good baseball people who have been in this for a while, who have the track record of developing players, who are looking out for players and parents, who understand the financial issues and the travel and so forth, and get a group like that, and you guys kind of get in cahoots together to educate and develop players better, and then hopefully, you know, manage the schedules and so forth better for parents and for the exposure of the players. I think it's a tremendous idea, and it's long overdue. So awesome. I think it's great what you guys are doing.
Well, that's a great answer, and we did not plug that, so I appreciate it. You know, last question here is obviously, you know, from a recruiting standpoint, you know, and also from a professional standpoint, you know, when pro scouts go and watch, like, how much would you say is weighed on the high school play versus the travel ball play?
I mean, I think for me, I think anytime you put the uniform on to play baseball, you need to perform. You never know who's going to be there watching you. And and we had this conversation again. It's similar question with a winter ball team. We have some big leaguers here that are having a little bit of a contract dispute, and maybe they weren't playing like they should be playing concentration wise because they're worried about something. And my point to them was, anytime you put the uniform on, you should be respecting the game of baseball, and you should know that it's an opportunity to you know, make a memory for yourself, or help your team win. Play the game the right way all the time, no matter what. So I think they're both important. I think that Isaiah got on the recruiting map because of travel ball, the recognition. Wow, this kid performed big tournament. But then the consistency of the high school performance kind of stamped it, like, okay, scouts are going, they're calling college guys, like, this kid's hitting, like, this is a real thing now, you know? So I think you got to keep doing it, man, because there's another kid somewhere else in South Carolina or Texas, he's doing it too. So, you know, you can't take anything for granted. You got to keep playing.